I think we had the piano riff.
Well, we were doing the
And
riff,
then-
and then I remember
yeah.
saying I like the meter of this. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting. Let's do the track like that, and then you would never understand anything.
Hello.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How are you?
Doing well, thanks, Adam.
Right. Hi,
I'm Rory, the product manager on the release. This is Darren.
Hey, Darren.
And Jono's just nipped to the toilet, but he'll be back with us in a second.
Okay, cool. Nice to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Likewise, yeah. Thanks for doing the interview.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a podcast about the both of you, and your journey in music, how you guys met, and then of course the album's coming out. And I love what you guys have put out thus far. I've been listening to it all morning.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and
Have
I really
you-
love. Sorry, go ahead.
Have you heard the whole album, or is it just the singles?
I only heard I've only heard 5 of the songs thus far. So yeah, the ones that you guys have put out, and then I've
Adam.
Hi, Adam.
do you go by Jono?
Jono, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just wanted to double check. Awesome.
Make this.
Oh, it's a shame you didn't get the whole album then.
I don't think I did. I got a press release that had.
Sure, I can send it over, Adam. Pretty
Send it
sure
over,
I
yeah.
added it on.
Yeah, I just have the yeah, I don't think I have the whole thing.
Track.
I have certain tracks, but I don't think I have the full record. But I would love to chat about the full record.
Yeah, no, great.
Killer. Yeah, and like I said, I really love what you have done so far. And I dug up that song that you did, let the shine the light in.
I didn't.
Yeah, and I love the I'm kind of nerd on this on like soundtrack type music, and that one that you guys did for that Glacier film is really cool.
Oh, cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to chat with you all. I don't know if you mind talking a little bit about Above and Beyond, just because it's kind of part of your story, but we're not going to stick on that very long because this is a podcast about your guys' journey in music, and then again how you met and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Sounds good.
Sweet. So, Darren, why don't you start? Where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born in London,
Okay.
in Hampstead, and pretty much lived here most of my life, all my life, apart from a few years in Leeds.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
And how did you get into?
Not much else to say apart from that.
Well, I mean, how about music? How did you get into music?
So I started learning piano when I was really young. I was about literally 4 or 5 years old. My great grandparents, they had a baby grand, and I used to just hit the keys.
Oh,
And they
wow.
went, somebody send it to piano lessons, for Christ's sake. We can't listen to whacking this thing anymore. So they did. They sent me off, and then I kept doing music, and I grew up with it and learned other instruments. And then went to university where I didn't do music. Actually, I did computers. And then I got into music theatre for a while, did some jobs, and then finally, back in the start of 2000, I had my first breakthrough hit record with a project called Angelic, and then had a dozen or so top 40 records after that. And it was back in those early days when I met Jono as well, right at the start of my career.
Okay, cool. Well, you piano at that early of an age, and then having a grand piano, access to a grand piano. Do you come from a musical household at all? Like, was that something that was kind of pushed, I would imagine, a little bit, at least at that age?
No, actually, no. I think apparently my great grandmother was a vaudeville singer, and that's really was about it. I just had this thing. I was actually a pretty awful student, because when I was supposed to be practicing grades and things, I ended up just going there and making music and messing around on the piano and whatever. And I used to even hijack my own lessons. My teacher was a composer, and he'd go, "Well, what have you practiced?" I go, "But yeah, forget all that. Just I make this riff up," and you go, "Oh, all right, we'll look at that instead." And then they go, "Well, why is he not doing any? What's going on with the exams?" And you go, "Well, he keeps hijacking these lessons. We can't." So anyway, yeah, not much in the way of family pedigree, no, but just something I was very much drawn to.
Yeah, that's funny that you just didn't care to learn the standards or whatever they're trying to teach you. You're like, "Oh, no, I'm going to write my own stuff."
Well, funny enough, though, when I got to an older age, I started wanting to learn that. And then I got into advanced orchestration. I had private tuition. I did master classes at universities. And so I went a completely different way with it. But when I was young, when it's being forced down your throat, you know, and you're at a young, impressionable age, you may not be so keen to grasp the bull by the horns. But I found as I got older and needed it more in my line of work, especially when it came to film scoring, which I did a lot of, it was, you know, obviously very useful. So
sure. Very, very cool. And what about you, Jono? How did you get in, or born and raised, actually? We'll start there.
Yeah, that's funny. There's a lot of parallels with what Darren said, but yeah, so I was born in Devon in the southwest of England,
Okay.
in a city called Plymouth, and kind of grew up in the South Hams, which is part of Devon. Moved away from Plimpton and Plymouth area quite young, and similar to Darren, when I was a kid, when I was 4 or 5, I'd imagine that sort of age. I was playing on the piano a lot, and my gran actually lived in the same house as us until that age, and taught me how to play the piano. But like Darren, I was more interested in kind of doing my own thing than learning the pieces. But my gran wasn't too pushy with that stuff. But then later on, other music teachers were. But I always kind of sort of forged my own path. But I remember at that age, my parents had a lot of vinyl and stuff like it would be like Dire Straits on the one hand, but then and then there was Pet Shop Boys and all of these kind of electronic and bands as well, proper bands. So there was a kind of melting pot of music there for me to listen to. And I remember sort of miming on the sofa to Jean-Michel Jarre, and seeing some of his concerts at places like the Docklands in London. There was a very famous Jean-Michel Jarre concert that had a lot of grandeur about it, with lasers and things.
And the big this 360 keyboard he had.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's cool.
Very similar to Darren in the sense that that there was a theme, I suppose, growing up of sort of being taught stuff, but actually rebelling a little bit and kind of doing my own thing, and being some of it came from a degree of laziness as well. And like Darren, I feel that later in life I've wanted to learn more about music theory, although I did do grade 5 music theory for some reason. I think people had to do it.
As
yeah,
did I.
So I did know quite a bit of music theory growing up as well, but
okay,
wasn't the kind of core of what I was into. It was more playing by ear, listening to stuff on the radio, recording stuff off the radio on cassette, which is now.
I remember doing that.
Yeah, but, playing along with stuff. There was a lot of that going on, jamming with friends, and But growing up, it was from a fairly humble background, and never had the money to buy bits of equipment, so I kind of would mow the lawn and do little jobs to kind of save up to buy a drum machine from a second-hand shop and things like that. So there was always that. I was
still doing my lawn if you want.
But yeah, I remember going to the theatre when I was probably 7 or 8 and hearing the music director at the back playing on a synthesizer, and there was just he was sweeping the filter or something. And I remember just hearing this sound and going, I want to do that, that sound. I want that, I want to be able to make those noises. And those kind of little moments that you have when you're a kid, have a huge impact, I think, on things that you yearn for. And, it's no coincidence that there's a Roland Jupiter 8 sitting in there, finally.
Oh, cool.
Because it's things that you kind of, that nostalgic thing that you grew up with, right? That you kind of try to live out as an adult, I think. There's been quite a lot of that, but I don't know if that answers your question.
No, totally. Yeah. No, I love that. It sounds like you said you were jamming with people too, though. Were you in a band at all, like through those early years?
Yeah, I mean, even when I was 7 or 8, I think we had I think it was called Generation 4, our little primary school band. And then I think that was right. And then when I was a sort of teenager, I played in rock bands and stuff, played guitar and keys as well. And we did a lot of covers, did a few gigs and things. And that was always fun. Lunch times were spent in the music rooms. There was a bunch of friends and we'd just jam in the music rooms in lunch times. And, there's a degree of, I wouldn't say misspent youth, but, I always knew I wanted to do music, so I was so focused on that. You know, maybe there were times when I missed out on the sort of just normal school stuff because I was so
didn't seem to matter, right?
yeah, no, you make up for it later on, don't you, as well? And yeah, so I was just always passionate about music, both electronic music, but also I was into, like, I would say jazz influenced music. I wouldn't say I mean, I love going to a jazz club and seeing a band play there, say, but you know, stuff like Steely Dan, for example, that I would regard as rooted in jazz but kind of pop music. Pop, not pop in the modern sense, but you know, pop in the kind of classical sense. So there was always that side of music that I was interested in, and then yeah, the electronic stuff, you know, like the Jean-Michel Jarre's, the Pet Shop Boys, who I would say amazing songwriters as well, Depeche Mode, New Order, all those bands. So I've always and I still have an interest in, you know, many different genres of music. I can always find something to enjoy in different styles of music. Personally, yeah.
And
Darren, were you ever in a band? It sounds like that was music kind of came later for you, or when it came to that sense.
I went through various bands. I was in a band at university. We would do gigs and things for events that happened there, and we were pretty awful.
What would you play? Did you play keys?
Piano and occasionally clarinet, which is an
in the band.
Yeah, things like oh, I don't know. We would do some like blues stuff sometimes, so there was a call for it. But I just remember it would be like one shocking thing after. I remember one time the drummer. I remember it was like thinking that he'd always drum too fast, so and he ended up and this pint glass was next to him, which smashed, and then I realized all the electrics were open around my feet, and I could see it dribbling its way to me, thinking I might just die on this stage. It was of that level. So and then when I went to university, I did a lot of music theatre, and I actually did stuff at Sadler as well. I was a music directed, and we did stuff with orchestras. That's when I kind of started on the orchestra side. Sometimes I'd be conducting the orchestra, but that really, my band experience kind of ended at that point in time in my life, and it became more me as a hermit in a production room.
Yeah, I did some amateur dramatic stuff as well with theatre, sort of, you know, playing keyboards. We did I'm trying to think, I think actually with the school I did some Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff, Joseph, and then but then we did some other stuff with the adults as well, like doing the music, and that's kind of a baptism of fire, sort of having to be able to just sort of busk it sometimes, because I was never that well rehearsed, but I kind of like busk my way through a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's it was one of the apparently there are recordings of this group I was in. I think
dig those up.
I
was gonna say I'm gonna have to do some deeper research here.
Bury them in different parts of the world so they never come back together and make a complete recording again.
Fragment data.
Fragment it. So.
That's awesome. Well, when did you? Because Jono, obviously you started, or you know, later on, Above and Beyond began a thing, and it was more of that side of the industry. Whereas Darren, it sounds like you went more of the scoring route as well, and then you both kind of came together with The Last Glacier in a similar sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot of dance music till about 2007, and I had a good run of hit records. I worked with you know, like did Project Boy George. I had quite a lot of artists like Charlotte Church who appeared on my records. I had quite a lot of relative UK
more chart success than Above and Beyond.
Well, but certainly back. It was a good period where Radio 1 was very receptive to certain types of music, and so that
was that more on the, like, you'd produce the records and then they would come out. It wasn't more on the touring performance side, I guess, is my question.
I was the artist usually signed to the label, and then the art. So if it was Charlotte Church or whoever else, they would be the featured artist.
Okay.
So like the first project with Angelic was the British DJ a Radio 1 DJ at the time called Judge Jules. His wife Amanda was the singer. In that case, people considered Angelic as a group, even though I was originally signed as the producer. And then we did actually come to think of it, we did PA tours and stuff, and they were also not particularly amazing. But those were the early days, and then it was mainly production. Yeah, being a producer with artists coming in to sing on those records, which is kind of, I think that's kind of the way a lot of the way our business worked was like that.
And I actually met Darren when he was doing his dance stuff, and I heard Angelic, It's My Turn, which is, it's got a great chord progression and riff in it. And I met Darren in Japan. We were both touring independently, but kind of on the same gig in Japan. That was one of our first gigs as Above and Beyond. And so that's when we got talking. And then after that, we wrote a track called Let the Light Shine In.
I love that song.
2001 or something like that.
Yeah.
Because we connected musically, and I had a lot of respect for, when I heard Darren's records, it's just one of those things when you can tell people know what they're doing, and I just instantly connected with his music. And yeah, I
think we both had a very shared view of, there's a certain mindset, I think, with an appreciation of certain types of music, and and so Jono and I always had that kind of same kind of appreciation and respect for each other's ability to appreciate that, which I think is also key. And I think that's why we worked so well together very early on, and have continued to do so now.
Sure. What was like, Darren, for you, and then I'm going to ask you the same question, Jono, what was like the first moment that kind of gave you some validation with what you're doing musically, to where you're like, oh, this, either like this could be a career for me, or this is definitely like something like that's working in the sense of like, okay, I'm putting out these records and no one cares. And then you finally get like, oh, wow. Or if that even happened. I mean, I'm just curious when that happened.
When when I left university, I had some opportunity, things turned up in the music business. Because I was doing my own demo tapes, hiring my own studios and all that stuff. And I got messed around quite a bit. And because I got messed around, I actually went and got a normal job, like IT job and all that, but I never stopped doing the music. And at that point I was like, it was going to take a lot now for me to really go off and make this a career. And so I was still doing it. And then I met another manager, and he was like, you should be doing this. And I still didn't jump ship. And then eventually I had this quite big project blow up, the first one. And then it was like, okay, that, that financially someone's saying, just stop doing your job for 5 years. We'll look after you. It's a no brainer. Do I want to turn up, or do I want to do the thing I love and be paid to do it? And, and the thing is, I knew that once I did that, I would never look back. And I haven't, I've always been very passionate about it, but it's a tough career. There have been ups and downs. There often are for many people. But I never regret a second of it, and it's been so many highlights through it all. So
sure. With that first hit record, like, how did that kind of happen? Do you remember? Like, did you put it out, or like did it get picked up on, I've heard a lot of stories with SoundCloud, or a blog grabbing it? Like do you remember how that?
Yeah, no. Well, what really with that, because that was the project that I mentioned with that Judge Jules DJ. But originally, actually, that record started off as me doing an on-spec remix for an act called Sunscreen. And or the only thing I liked about that track was the vocal, and I completely redid all the music. And then this record label called Sirius, who later were owned by Universal, said that we love everything in the record apart from the vocal. We've got Judge Jules works, so he'd love to do a vocal on this and just keep your music. And then it became a whole legal mess, is the truth. But at that point in time, because he got into it, that meant it was going to be played on Radio 1 regularly, and the label was going to get into it. And so that really formed the foundation for me embarking on a full-time career.
Got you. And the same question, I guess, for you too, Jono, is like, when did it all change, and when did it become, oh my gosh, this is working. Like, we need to pursue this.
I think like in childhood, there was an encouragement point. I had this really great music teacher called Sue Steele, and she was really positive and kind of just encouraged people who were into music to really pursue that. And we won this competition as kids. It's like 8 or 9 or something. It was like the local county competition. I think we won it, or maybe we came third. I can't remember. We did very well.
Wow! At that young, and were you going up against people of your same age group, or was it just like the whole everyone can join?
It was our same, just a same age group.
Okay.
I think. Or I mean, it would have been primary school, so it would have been, 7 to 11 or something, a range. But
sure.
I think there was that. But then I also had a job before I went to university that kind of put me off having a job. And I think that was a big motivation. And then it was just working in the supermarket. But I'm really thankful for that, because it made me realize, God, I don't want to be doing that. And you know, it's a very valuable job to do, of course, for, you know, for the world and everything, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. And then when I went to university, I think the first true moment where I actually had some success that made me think, oh, maybe we could do this. Although I kind of always had the drive to kind of do it. There was no question in a way. It was just like, how am I going to make this happen? But when we actually saw some success I was working with Parvo, who is part of Above and Beyond. And we released our first record on our own label, Anjunabeats, and we just pressed it up onto vinyl and sold 1,000 copies and got our money back, and then a small amount of profit. And that was like, oh wow, you know, we can actually do this alone. That was, I think, the other thing, to realize we could possibly just, you know, make enough to get by. And then we did the next release and the next release. And I suppose the big moment in my career was when we remixed Madonna, because we remixed a track called What It Feels Like for a Girl. And we were asked to remix Madonna, and we had the cheek to ask to remix that track rather than the first one they offered, which I think was Music, off that same album, which we didn't want to do because we didn't know what to do with it. And so they said, okay, so we did What It Feels Like for a Girl. And then Guy Ritchie, her husband at the time, wanted to use our mix in the video, which I think was the first time at that point, perhaps, that a remix had been used for such a big artist as the main mix. You know, it's what radio. We didn't know what was going on, but we were being asked to make a different version of the mix, which ended up being on the video. And we were kind of kept, it was all very hush hush secret, you know, can you just change this, can you do this? I'm like, why are we taking that sound out? Because it is a slightly different version on the video. But I think that was the big moment for us, if there was one. Certainly in Above and Beyond's career, and for me. But the interesting thing, I suppose, about my career that I always say is that it's not been, you know, this kind of spike of massive success. It's been steadily kind of growing, and yeah, that's, you know, but that was a moment, I suppose, where things changed, because I think it opened certain doors. So much of this industry is about perception. There's a lot of talented people out there. But, you know, once you're associated with Madonna, or you know, we did remixes as well for Britney Spears and Adamski and various other artists. And once you get into that world, you know, you're perceived differently, and it does open doors. So I think there was that. But, you know, generally we've had records that went on the radio and stuff, but that's not been the kind of tentpoles of our success, really. It's been steadily building a fan base, certainly in the Above and Beyond world. So that was when I realized, I think, once we did, you know, those major label remixes, you've just got to keep doing it. I realized if we just keep doing it, we'll build something along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up like kind of the steady growth, because obviously that leads to the longevity you both have had in your careers. Because if it comes to like nowadays, there's like the TikTok hit that goes, and then, you know, can you follow that? Or this artist that created this one thing doesn't realize it's going to take off, and they don't have a backlog, or it's just so new to them, and then it could just quickly, you know, fall off. Whereas I've talked to a few artists that it's like, you know, or a lot of artists where it's like, you know, that slow build is the way to keeping the longevity and showing that you can steadily put out music that hits.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I don't know what's going on in other people's heads, but from the conversations that I have, I get a sense that a lot of people are focused on those spikes and focused on the quick hits and things, not musical hits, but I mean, just, you know, hits on TikTok and things.
Yeah.
I just feel exactly what you're kind of alluding to, Adam, which is that, like, if you focus on that bigger picture, it's so much more valuable long term. It's not only for your career, but for yourself, because these things are out of our control to a great degree. You know, whether someone uses your song on TikTok or whatever. I mean, there's things that you can maybe do to help that stuff, but is that really why we got into music? I'm not sure it is.
I don't know. I'm just going off of I have a 14-year-old, and that's all, like, I mean, that their whole world is getting those followers and getting that spike and getting that hit. And I'm always asking him like, well, then what happens after that? Like, what do you, then you get it. And then what, like, you have to chase it and chase it and chase it. Whereas if I tell him like, build something of your own and watch it do this, not go, hopefully we'll throw paint at the wall until we hit one hit. And then, but it's just a totally different world. But I'm curious. Okay. So you both met you said in Japan.
Yep.
And decided then, once you kind of understood, obviously connected, you put out that one record. And then when do you come back together and go, okay, yeah, we should work together again? Or from that moment on, were you always kind of, aside from Above and Beyond and from your projects, Darren, were you both, in contact with each other, working on music, or no?
So we did 2 records back then, a track called, as well as Let the Light Shine, we did a track called Nocturnal Creatures, which we did a little bit after, about a year later or something like that. And then
which funnily enough, there's a funny story behind that track, because people keep borrowing bits from it. I don't know why, but we've had our publisher contacts us about once a year.
Somebody plagiarizes it. It's like it's an annual thing, an annual plagiarizing festival. We literally we did these 2 records, and then we didn't do anything else until JODA, but we stayed in touch as friends the whole time. I went off on this film and producing other artists, Tangent, and Jono continued with Above and Beyond, watched it expand, and Anjunabeats, of course. But we often stayed friends, and and I think that's why, and we talked about doing something, and it was just it wasn't one of those things that was practical from a time point of view, and really it was, if anything, the film of course was then the first time that we then were brought back together, which was what was it, 2020
2019 2020
and then so that brought us in. Jono was like, well, this is what Darren does, so very kindly said, come on, let's bring it, and which was great. And then we were able to rekindle that relationship and realize that we actually have quite a lot of fun working together. It's almost therapeutic sometimes to be able to work with someone who's like-minded, and and has, because there's a lot of it's not as far as a dopamine release mainly, but you get, when you're really working on something that connects to you musically, it gives you it's a really great thing when that comes together, and when you're doing it with a friend and you're building on something like that, it's one of the main reasons I got into doing music. And when you do that, it's a great experience, and so we were able to rekindle that. And then of course that we did that through the film. We had a lot of fun with that, and then the pandemic happened, and that then gave us another window to do this new project, JODA, together.
Okay. Yeah. And so did it start with, did the Last Glacier start then with you, Jono, or was it, and then you brought in Darren?
Yeah, so what happened was,
interesting. I figured it was the other way around.
So what happened, obviously in the back of my mind, Darren's incredible orchestration, string arranging, all that kind of stuff. And what happened was, Craig, who directed Last Glaciers, had heard some of our music, some of Above and Beyond's music, and he got in touch with us and said, "I'd love you to do the score for this documentary film." And we thought that would be a great thing to do. We've always wanted to do, as Above and Beyond, more, film score stuff. And I realized that the thing with this is I could have a crack at doing a film score and it would be all right, but I wanted to bring Darren in because Darren's incredible at film score stuff. He's done it before, and I just felt that if we're going to do this, we're so busy with our gigs as well. When we're working on this, we need to spend our time properly, focused, working with someone who knows what they're doing. And Darren's the perfect guy to do that. And so I suggested, why don't we do it with Darren? So that's why we started working with Darren on it. And it worked out to be a great collaboration. Also, I wanted to work with Darren again because I hadn't worked with him for ages. He's a great friend. So it worked out really well. We had a lot of fun doing it. I went to the studio a lot And
Yeah.
it was nice. It's also nice when you're, when you get into someone else's studios, just simply being in a different room is a wonderful thing, as I'm sure you know. And so it's great to go up to North London and work with Darren. And he's got everything set up with certain plugins and the kind of expression controllers and everything for strings and all this kind of stuff, because we had a budget obviously for the score, and so we didn't use live strings. We use canned strings, if that's the correct term. But we wrote all these pieces, and then what happened really was that
Canned strings.
Yeah. we
Selling it.
which sound great though. We wrote all these pieces for the score, and then what happened was Craig hadn't finished the film, the director. So we were sort of twiddling our thumbs. We didn't really want to write anymore, change the length of things, because as you know, when you shoot to picture, what you're making is obviously influenced by what you're seeing. And if the scenes were going to change, we kind of had all of the rough sketches for the whole film. We were at a good point with it, and I said to Darren, there's no point in us doing any more work on this. Or we both agreed it. I don't know if I said it to you, but so we took a little break from it, and I said to Darren, why don't you come down to the studio, come down to my studio for a change of scenery, just like he'd given me by me going over there. And so Darren came down and we jammed out a track together, which is Shape of Your Heart. And then
wow.
So yeah, we're jamming out. We had no agenda at all, which is a nice place to be, I think, musically. Sometimes if I'm doing stuff for Above and Beyond, as much as I would want to get rid of the baggage of knowing the gigs we've done, where our music gets played, can I do that? There's always going to be there in the subconscious. Whereas doing, working together on those tracks, for example, that I just mentioned, We Find Ourselves and Shape of Your Heart, we jammed those together, not really knowing what they were. It's like, okay, we find ourselves, let's do something at 110 BPM. It's different. We just try to do something a bit slower for a change, which I wouldn't normally gravitate towards with Above and Beyond, because that music's played in clubs and it's of a certain tempo generally. So certain things like that happened, and we were jamming out ideas, firing up all the old analog gear that sometimes hadn't been turned on as much as I would have liked to, because
wow, okay.
Sure. So that was really nice. Sorry?
No, I was just agreeing with you, like doing the analog route. That's really cool.
Because
a lot of it's played in and out of time on the record as well.
Because when I came down that time, because I had only just started doing the thing, because I just started doing, I had just done a project.
You did Overture, didn't you?
A track called Overture, and I did it by using pretty much all the analog gear that I had lying around. And then I had a lot of fun doing it. And actually sometimes it's something about the way you perform sometimes, because it's more hands-on. You end up, when you're working with a mouse, you'll think it's a very linear process. You'll go, right, I need a little bit more, maybe open up this filter, and you'll draw a line. Whereas when you actually got your hands on a keyboard, you go, oh, this is a bit of fun, let's throw this on. And I realized doing that.
Don't overthink it.
And
as well.
you don't overthink it. And that actually also, it makes it's more organic, and the mixing is more organic. And so I kind of had that in my head when I came to see you that time. And I think
you were sort of saying, hey, let's turn something on.
Let's turn look at it.
It's all off.
Beautifully restored, very expensive vintage gear sitting here not doing anything. And it's like, maybe this is sacrilege. Let's just get this stuff working again. And I think we that kind of was the catalyst, wasn't it, for everything that followed?
And I think, I can't remember whether it came from both of us or one of us, but we were very keen to sort of like just do whatever, it was. So, and then lockdown happened, and it was like, okay, well, we're definitely doing whatever now. All the clubs are shut.
Okay.
Making any dance music, So I think we took a couple of weeks off while the government sort of worked out its strategy, and then it's you're allowed to go to work together. There were certain rules, and we sort of worked around them as best as we could, and then we sort of put together the JODA album, in the sense of we probably wrote about 15 demo songs, and they were pretty much like jams, weren't they? I mean, we'd run a drum pattern off a drum machine like the old days or something, and kind of record that in, and then jam along to that, and we ended up with tracks and tracks of bits of synths and
stuff.
and like just loops of filtering bass lines and things. And then the next step for each of those tracks was to kind of go through it and edit it all, which was kind of in some ways less fun than the first bit, but still good fun.
It gets gradually as you have to mix the thing.
Yeah, that's the work.
Arduous, but what I think was good was also because one of the things that you can fall almost victim to your success in this business, because say if you have like a big project, big dance project, and then you have an audience, then the audience, you kind of almost you get this kind of expectation they want to hear a certain thing, and you end up going, well, I've got to write my music at this tempo, I've got to write it, I'm even thinking about what key I'm going to write it because of how well it works on the sound system, and and so it becomes, you kind of almost end up compartmentalizing what we got into this business to do and what we love about it in the first place. And so JODA was an opportunity, I think, just to kind of let out some steam, literally, and go, well, let's not do that in 4/4, let's do that in 7/4, or let's make this synthetic breaks, or I love this track a bit and let's throw some of that in. And so it was a very freeing experience creatively, I think.
In some ways, though, actually, the track that's in 7/4, which is Fall Away, it was accidentally in 7/4 actually, when we think about it, because I think we had the piano riff.
Well, we were doing the riff, and then I remember saying I like the meter of this. It's quite interesting. Let's do the track like that, and then you would never understand anything. Sir Apple.
That was amazing.
Thanks. So anyway, we had this idea anyway, and so it evolved from being a bit more out of the box in general, I think.
It's true what Darren's saying. That's it was kind of like the process was, let's throw the paint at the wall and let's make sense of it afterwards. And there does come a point where you're like, okay, well, maybe that's a bit long, and you have to make it, you don't want it to end up just being a big splurge of jamming. So then we started putting vocals on the stuff as well, and kind of developing it.
And then I think on that one, that's an important point, because Jono just basically got up on the mic one day. I'd heard some of the tracks he had been working on before that, and I thought, you know what, Jono, you can sing, mate. And then so when we started working on this stuff, he was getting up on the mic and jamming ideas, and I thought, this sounds. And I'll be honest, I'm quite fussy about my choice of because tonality and the sound of, for me, and I think for Jono as well, the tone for both of us, the tone of a voice is so very, very important when you're working on music. And we tend to generally avoid things that are tropes, like that are too big or too obvious. And when I heard Jono sing on the record, I thought this work, there's a symbiosis between what we've done musically and your voice. And I think that was great as well. And I think over time, I think you quite even more confidence, right? And we just gained, it started really getting a sound together. And ever since, and everyone's gone, it's hard to imagine you not on the records now in a way, so it's that was great the way that developed.
It was a lot of fun doing it, actually. Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of questions I want to touch on real quick, because it sounds like this was the first time in a while that you've both had the opportunity to kind of just start totally from scratch and not have any expectation of what you were going to do, because with both of your backgrounds and successes, it's like what's working, and if you put out a record with Above and Beyond, for example, and it sounds nothing like anything you guys have ever did, that your audience might be like, whoa, like jarred by the product, even though it could be the best thing ever, but it still might be, kind of something unfamiliar when it comes to your audience in that way. Where is with this project, it was, let's just it's almost back to square one. Like, oh, we'll do whatever we want and see what happens here.
Yeah, and even with Above and Beyond, I did try to do that, but there's always an anchor point, I suppose, sort of like anchoring it back into the world that it sits in.
Right. Yeah. Not saying that you put the same record out every time, but it's like there's probably there's got to be some sort of
parameters.
Yeah, exactly. That you
100%.
if you go too far outside of it, then it might be, oh, okay, that's interesting, or too interesting, or too unfamiliar.
You're pushing at the edges with Above and Beyond, say, like, you know, or testing that edge. Whereas with JODA, there aren't any edges. You know,
Right.
It was, okay, what have we got here? We made the stuff, and then we tried to put a few edges in afterwards, if you like, to try and sort of work out what it is, and then we kind of found the sound of it afterwards, and kind of brought it together, because the album goes on a bit of a journey. It's not you know, when we put the first couple of records out, the word that was being bandied around was synthwave all the time, and I suppose fair enough, I can see why people say that, but I think when people get the album, they'll be a bit surprised by what's on there, because it's, you know, like the opening track. The opening track is almost like influenced by like Genesis, or, you know, like,
oh, cool.
you know, like,
Yeah.
I love Phil Collins and Genesis, and a lot of the vocal effects we use and stuff like that are, you know, influenced by that.
It's a bit of that with Radiohead, with like, it's got all these different elements, isn't it? So you kind of, you know, it's not one thing, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear the synth wave like on Dark Strings and like the earlier ones, but then but Closer doesn't sound like that. I mean, Closer is totally, it's not as
electro side, isn't it? That one?
Yeah. And
it's funny. I saw someone calling that an 80s something or other as well. I was thinking, is it 80s, that one? But
that one that sounds the least. I mean, even Shape of Your Heart doesn't sound 80s ish to me. It's more, not even 80s, but I guess Dark Strings just kind of has that more like the tone of your voice and the song and the drive of it has a little bit of that synth, you know, synth wave sound, Depeche Mode-y, New Order ish.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. And so with the Closer, it's the Closer brought us onto that kind of, I think, that was slightly more still uses the vintage synths though, that we talked about, like the Juno 106, the Jupiter 8. We still use those synths in it, but the vibe of it is a bit more kind of driving and a more contemporary electro feel. And then when you see the album, then you'll suddenly, like you said, you'll hear things that are a bit more rocky, or you'll hear a bit more breaksy, and in one instance a bit more trancey. So you know, there are all these other areas that still, I feel like the whole thing has a lot of the flow to it from beginning to end. I think we were very much focused on that, and I hope people appreciate that we wanted them to go on a bit of a journey with this thing.
But the vocals, the types of chord progressions, the synths, they all tie it together in a sense. When you hear the album, I think it ties it together, because there's a bit of glue in there.
There is, I use this analogy. We were actually talking earlier, and I use this analogy, which is where I said you could imagine an artist painting two completely different pictures, but because he's done them both with a certain type of watercolor, there is that symbiosis. So you might do complete things, but you've still got this feeling of connectivity. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to have with the album,
even down to making it in the same room.
Yeah, the room, exactly.
The studio that you work in will produce, just because of how you perceive stuff, it will produce a different, you know, different reactions, the way you react to what you're hearing in the room. So the fact that we, you know, made it in that one studio pretty much, and we say that gives it a house sound as well, I think, and the gear as well. You know, we mixed it out of the box. You know, there's all sorts of debates about whether that matters for some people and stuff like that, but it does give a different sound, that's for sure.
And it makes you think, work in a different way as well, which is the thing, isn't it? You come at things slightly differently. As I said, when you're working outside of the box, as an outside, not sitting in front of the computer the whole time.
And were you working on JODA before the pandemic hit, or it became a project due to the pandemic? Now you have all this time.
Arguably due to the pandemic, but I think we started the first. We did the first 2 tracks, maybe, or first at least one of the tracks just before it hit.
But it was like, let's just working together, like let's just try to write something here, and then it became a project.
The circumstances enabled it, because you know, Tony was away in Miami, Pavo went away around the world on a boat, and I was stuck here in London on my own. And you know, we had the studio, and it was empty, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? You know, I mean, and you know, personally, like mentally, I couldn't face making dance music, because it's funny because I used to listen to dance music when I was a kid. I had a copy of the Paul Oakenfold Goa mix on radio, which was on Radio 1. And that's one of the things that got me into dance music. And then I went to clubs and heard it. And then losing that connection during the pandemic with clubs made me not want to make, I just didn't fancy making dance music. I really felt like, oh, this is an opportunity here to actually have a break and do something different and hopefully freshen up dance music afterwards for myself, you know. I really feel, I don't know how many musicians are like this, but I feel that it's important to have different projects going on, so that, you know, it keeps the other things fresh, you know. If you do something else, it just keeps that other world that you're operating in fresh. And that was a massive value of JODA in itself, to get to do that album during the lockdown and just to sort of like turn the dance floor off for a bit.
Right, like exercise different muscles in
Exactly,
you know, creatively.
And a friend of mine, you know, you sort of said a similar phrase earlier, but a friend of mine in Canada who heard the album, he was really into it, and he said, it sounds like you had something to get off your chest. That's what he said. And I think that's true. It's like it was almost an opportunity to get the music that you love from your entire history into a record, in a sense.
Sure.
Right?
I love it. I only have a few more questions for you guys, but this has been so much fun. I appreciate your time. When you decided, was it like a decision that you had made, Jono, was to sing on the record, or was it just kind of happened? Like you got up there and Darren's like, oh no, you sound good, let's do this.
Well, I think what happened, Darren sort of mentioned that what I'd written a song that when we were working on the film, I brought it over to Darren's house, this song I'd written, and you seem to like it. And then that's kind of how I was doing the vocals on that song, I should point out. And it was kind of all we had as well. I mean, sure, we could have sent stuff off to people to sing on it. It was a lot of fun doing it. I felt, well, I don't want to just sing on these records in an indulgent way. At the same time, it was really good fun doing it. And without Darren's encouragement to do it, I wouldn't have done it, because it just feels self-indulgent by nature to me for some reason. But it was really enjoyable to do, and it's kind of accidental, but yeah, it was very cathartic writing the songs together as well. We would write the songs, you know, we'd go for a walk up the road, walking the dog. London was dead, you know, there was no one around, no cars, it was just crazy, but we'd sit in the park and write these stories and you know, turn them into songs, really. And that was really good.
All the anguish coming out.
But yeah, no, so doing the vocals, it was a really important thing to do, I think. And it's been nice to get some positive reception from it. I think it was kind of a bit scary. Well, it definitely was a bit scary. But
yeah,
you know, it's like, I've got the utmost respect for people who sing on anything, because I find it myself a really hard thing to do.
Well, super vulnerable. I mean, if somebody thinks that you suck at singing, or like, oh, it's like you can't change your voice. You can work on it, but like, you
know, it's like,
right, yeah. Even like Derek said, it's like tone, like the tone of someone's voice can't be changed. Like you could hit every note, but if your tone, or like just the way your voice sounds, doesn't sound appealing to a lot of people, then you're probably not going to make it as a singer.
Not everybody's going to like it, and you know, you have to accept that. I think when you do vocals on something, it's like, but there are plenty of different types of vocalists. There are vocalists who just are incredible singers, like Adele, and then there's vocalists who are on sort of like new wave 80s records, who maybe they're not the best technical singer, but they've got a sound. And you know, so there's room for all different flavors of vocalists, and there's not one right way of doing it. And sort of accepting that and realizing that helps, I think, because then it's like, well, you know, not everyone's going to like it. Here it is, you know, but like try and keep it authentic, and try and just do you, and then that's all you can do, and see what happens. And yeah.
Well, I love it. And I love that you guys are doing a full album, which is something that a lot of people are doing anymore. And just that, I love, there's something about putting a whole album on and hearing it from front to back, and you know, the track choices that you make and why the first song was where it is or the fifth is where it is. Like, I think that's super cool. And I'm sure that took a lot or an immense amount of time, just, you know, tweaking. Oh, should we move this song to here or to
100%,
here?
you're spot on. Yeah.
A lot of tweaking.
Because we were very conscious of the keys and things like that. Because sometimes, like, it's the same with the DJ set. Sometimes you want to keep stuff in the same key to get that flow. Sometimes you want to move a fifth, or, you know, go around the circle of fifths or something. And then other times you maybe want to, you know, jar with people and make a slight clash, or, you know, go up a semitone or down. I don't know if we did that particular thing on the album, but it, you know, there's moments where you want to move and moments where you kind of want to keep it smooth. And we did think a lot about that, and it was really important to get it to flow. And then there's other challenges that follow on from that, because one of the main platforms music is released on is Spotify. If you make stuff that overlaps, if you release those tracks as singles, they are not as self-contained, obviously, because there might be a little trail of something.
Oh, right.
Last record. And so we had to kind of think about that sometimes as well, because you kind of want to have one version of the song, or, you know, maximum two versions if there's an edit or something. You know, and that is, I suppose, one of those areas where you are thinking about the external industry, the business of music, in a sense. But for us, it was important to kind of think about those things afterwards, which meant that we did have some problems, you know, with that stuff later on, didn't we? That we had to kind of resolve. But yeah, I love doing albums because it just gives you mentally so much more freedom. And you can express so much more. Not every track needs to feel like a single. There's so many reasons. And I think that it's really important that, I think I was watching something on marketing the other day. They were talking about how brands do things that are beyond the how can I put it, you know, the seemingly loss leading, but to make the brand bigger. And I think, you know, so what if an album isn't numbers wise always important as it used to be, but I think what it says about an artist is really important. And longer term, like coming back to our point we were discussing earlier, you pointed out, it's like you're growing something longer term, and, you know, not everyone, but there's a culture of chasing the short term, isn't there? Especially with, so, you know, scrolling through stuff fast on social media, videos getting shorter, all this, that kind of culture. And I feel that there's room within the world for podcasts prove it, right? You know, people listen to podcasts that are a lot longer. Yeah. There's room for that in music as well. It may not be as visible to all the metrics all the time, but there are people out there who really enjoy listening to an album that was crafted from start to finish, and that's important to people. And we shouldn't focus on the lowest common denominator. I think, you know, it's not helpful for music as an art.
No, I completely agree. It's like having 500 hardcore fans that will listen to the album in full and buy it and come see you, versus 10,000 people that know one single and could care less about going to watch you guys or even invest in your group at all.
Yeah, I think I feel like we're getting some of that from the responses we've had. Like, people really, maybe not have everyone, but the people that have responded have really been uber enthusiastic. Like, which is kind of, for me, is
job done.
Job in a way, yeah. You know, I know we're not going to make everyone happy with this. You never can make everyone happy with everything. It's the nature of the beast. But just the fact that it's connected that well with certain people, I think that's a great step.
Yeah, I think in terms of the external sort of success or, you know, connection of the project, that's the thing. The biggest thing for me, the most exciting thing, is when someone understands something that you were trying to convey and they get it. You know, it's not about quantity, but when you see that someone got it, you know, that's a nice feeling, because you've conveyed your message in the right way. Then, you know,
yeah.
I love it. Well, but thank you so much, Darren, Jono, for doing this. This has been so much fun to hear your story, and I love the record and what you guys have done so far, and I can't wait to hear the whole thing. And again, thank you. I have one more question for you both. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I think something I would always say is to obviously listen to other people by all means, but I think what you've got to do is stay on your own path and and keep at it, because I think there's, like, we've sort of been discussing it in this podcast quite a bit, but there's a tendency to think you need to be copying someone else or doing something else, and what people really connect with is artists who are themselves and, you know, deliver that artistically. And you know, even if you get a rejection from a record label, whether it be our record label or someone else's, it doesn't mean your music's not good enough. It just means it wasn't right for that label, and just keep at it, and, you know, stay true to your path, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this idea of the right time in the right place, some people think they think that's how it works, and the truth is, it's like the right time can be at any time. So, you know, yes, if you don't keep doing it, you might, you know, there will be tomorrow, and there will be the next day. And it's like John has said, you want to keep, if you're passionate about it, do it because you love it. You know, don't do it because you're, you know, and then if you keep at it and you work hard enough, I'm not going to say it's going to happen to everyone, because it's not, but you would have been satisfied, you would have given your best shot, and, you know, and you would have tried. And I think that's the most anyone can ask for anyone, in a way, you know, that you give it, you work at it, and you keep going at it.